Hi everybody, it's Erin and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So I was kind of scrolling around YouTube, found a video on why did God create people with disabilities, and I got angry. So I thought I'd turn my camera on. I would film this video and just share your thoughts with me. So this is the video. I know it took a couple seconds, but the video is why did God create some people with disabilities? And it's fine if you believe in God, and I'm kind of curious on your opinion. So let's get into this. As you can see, I'm going to say I mean no hate to this person. Don't go and troll. But let's actually hear what he has to say, and maybe he has some good points.
Hey, what's going on? Chad here, and I'm making this video in response to a question somebody had. And the question goes something like this: why has God created some people with disabilities? Now, before I get into answering this question, I would just like to start off by saying that I'm highly indebted to my personal hero in the faith, Ravi Zacharias, whom I have learned a great deal of the amount of information that
So what's really interesting is he says he's indebted to somebody so far, and that he's saying that he got all of his information from one person, from one source. As somebody who is skeptical at best of information, getting information from one source to me just doesn't seem like a good practice. But
I'm going to be using in order to attempting to answer this question. So let's go ahead and get into it. Why has God created some people with disabilities? Now, in order to understand the answer to this question, we ought to go back to the beginning. The beginning when God created man. It says when God created man, he created man in his image. And he looked and he saw.
Okay, so we're gonna hit right there. If God supposedly created man in his image, why, at what point does he go, let me make things a little more difficult for humans? Because way back then, we didn't have any of the medical technology we do. And I'll be very, very honest, some disabilities are very, very difficult to move through in life, or they do end up killing some of the patients. So, to say, oh, God created us in his image, that's already starting to say this. At least tell me you're not going to blame us in the end. That it's not going to still end up being the people with disabilities' fault, or people's fault. Please give me some hope.
He saw what he created. He saw that it was good. Now, the people with disabilities today are not a direct result of what God had created, which was in his image and which was good. However, the people with
That's a good point. We're not created in God's image. Actually, nobody's created in God's image. There is a whole actual theory of how humans came to be, and that is evolution, which I'm not going to get into. I don't tend to explain it well. However, there is another YouTuber I do recommend, who does explain it much better, and I'll actually link his channel down below. Now, to say that, we also have to establish that, like, my disability comes from genetics. Let's just hear what he has to say about how disabilities came from, because I'm already starting to get a little upset with his logic.
disabilities today are a result of man using his free will to act in disobedience to God. which introduced sin into the world and put us in the fallen state that we're in now. Alright, so that's the answer right there. It's really quite simple, that the people with disabilities today, the blame is not to be laid at the feet of God, but the blame is to be laid at humankind.
Okay, so when I found this video, this is exactly where I stopped, where I got really angry and said, this is why I'm going to make this. You're asking why God created people with disabilities, and then you're turning around and blaming the people. Bad genetics, bad accidents, there are accidents that cause disabilities, bad situations are not a result from a mythical sky fairy sitting there going, well, you sinned. And this is an issue I have with Christianity. To say, oh, you sinned, now I'm gonna punish you with something. And it's actually a common theme in the Bible where it's like, you're a lost shepherd, so I'm gonna blind you. You did not believe hard enough, so you shall have this disability. And they don't call it disabilities, they call it a disease, which means that there's a chance through science and research it can be cured. But you don't want science and research. You want blind faith. But let's let them talk.
Who sinned, who used disobedience against God and has put the world in the fallen state that it's in now. So now that we have the answer, let's go ahead and just look at a couple different avenues on trying to maybe just understand a way to cope with what we have before us now. Alright, so the same sin that separates us.
Now that we understand, no, I don't understand. I really don't.
From the Creator has also taken over mankind in all different kinds of shapes and sizes, like a cancerous plague. Some of us are sick, some of us have poor eyesight, some of us have no eyesight, some of us are deaf, some of us have physical conditions, heart conditions. Now,
okay, some of us have poor eyesight. Yeah, I actually wear glasses. I can concede to that. Some of us are deaf. I actually, in my intro, was wearing hearing aids. I'm not now, or I wasn't wearing hearing aids then. I am now. And that's completely choice based. Some of us are sick. Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's sucky. Some of us have heart conditions. If you watched my last video, you'll know I have postural orthostatic, tachycardia syndrome. Which means my heart, let's not get into the issues I have with my heart. And you've already blamed it on me to have this disability. But I'm only 2 minutes in, maybe he redeems himself.
Compare these people with these physical disabilities to some people that we would say don't necessarily have the physical disabilities. Some people that have 20/20 eyesight, however, they don't see the things that God wants them to see. Some people that have what we would call good hearing, however, they don't listen to what the Spirit has to say. Some people that have hearts that are strong and powerful and can run marathons, however, their hearts are hardened, they are seared. They don't soften to the things that God has done for them, to the sacrifice that Christ has done on the cross. Do you see what I'm trying to contrast here? Is that these people with disabilities that we could see from the outside looking in, it seems like such a bad thing, but perhaps, just maybe, it could be found to be some sort of a blessing in disguise. It's a result of a fallen world.
I will be very honest. If this is a blessing, you can take it back. I have it back. Because it physically causes me pain. And to say, oh, they have great eyesight, but they don't see what God wants them to see. God's a mythical sky fairy. You're not going to always... People aren't going to see things that... I don't even know how to explain this in a way that this man will understand. Or any heavy Christian like this. But to say that, oh, the disabilities that some people have are blessings, they're not. And secondly, if we actually look at what the Bible says about disability, it calls it a disease for being unfaithful. But I'll get to that at the end.
But maybe we could see the good in it. And I'll give a story here towards the end of this video in which you can kind of see some of the good in somebody's suffering. Because when suffering's happening in our own lives, it's so hard to understand and to comprehend the good that can be going on inside. But when we look at it in somebody else's life and we see how God pulls the threads together in that life to create something beautiful, we can better understand it. So I'm going to give a little story at the end. Now, taking these things into consideration, all right, the question becomes, who really has it worse? Who has it worse? The person with the physical disability or the person that has the spiritual disability? The person that's so distracted by the world?
Who has it worse? The person with a physical disability who is in pain 100% of the time in some cases, even if it's very mild, or a spiritual disability. In case y'all haven't noticed, I got very angry with this video. I'm very angry with this creator for what he's saying. Or I'm not angry with him. I'm angry with the ideology behind this. I'm going to be very clear. What's a mistake? There are people, and they have to move through life at a different pace. And they have to move through life in so much pain that's not even... It's almost not fair. It's really not fair. And then you have now blamed it on us. You have now blamed it on... you know, the fall of man, the original sin, which is the dumbest reason I've ever heard of somebody having a disability. I'm sorry, that's almost as bad as you were born with a disability because your parents had sex outside of marriage. Yes, my parents did. Hi, I'm the result of that. And then to say, oh, well, spiritual disability is just as bad. No, because if you have a spiritual disability, supposedly, do you really have a disability? Like, do you?
I mean, look at the rich and the famous people that have what seems like everything going for them today. They are so caught up, they are so absorbed in the world that they're not looking for God. They're not listening for Him. I mean, take the way that Jesus put it with the rich man. He says that it's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. I mean, do you see what he's saying? Why is he saying that? Because the rich man is going to be so caught up, he's going to be so absorbed into that money that he's not going to be listening for God. He's not going to be looking for God. So, taking that into consideration, human disabilities and death, you know, it's a sorrowful thing to the believer, but not as to those without hope. If we could somehow get the right perspective of God and our finite problems, listen guys, that's exactly what our finite problems become.
Disability is not a finite problem. In America, to be disabled is very, very expensive. And again, it hurts. I'm gonna skip to the end to kind of see about his story, I feel like I've pretty much heard the core of his argument. And I have a feeling, and this feeling's pretty good because I've definitely heard this quite a bit since getting diagnosed, more than I like to admit. I feel like he's basically saying that if you believe in God and heal your spiritual disability, your physical disability becomes a blessing, or it can be healed. And that's, maybe I'll let a few seconds play to see if I'm right, but that's where this feels like it's going.
Just only finite problems. One of America's greatest preachers, he was also known as the Great Illustrator. This guy, he was never shorthanded for a story until his wife died. And when his wife died, his little girl came up to him and she asked him, "Daddy, you always told me that Jesus died on the cross so that we wouldn't have to die. Well, if Jesus died on the cross, Daddy, why did Mommy have to die?" The father was stunned by the context of the little girl's question, and he says, "You know what, honey? Why don't you let me think about that for a little while?" So, on the day of the funeral, they were driving in the car on the way to the cemetery. It was a bright and sunny day. The sun was shining on the road, and there in front of the funeral car, there's a very large sort of tractor-trailer truck stopped at a traffic light. The sun was shining down on the truck, and a shadow was being cast on the sidewalk. And the Great Illustrator, he turned to his daughter and says, "Honey, if you had to be run over today, would you rather be run over by the truck, or would you rather be run over by the shadow?" She looked at him.
What the Whoa! Okay, to the person in the story who lost his wife, I am so sorry. But that does not give you to the place to ask your child, would you rather be run over by a truck or the shadow of a truck? Excuse me. And to be fair, the kid's question's pretty legit. You were told, if you're around the Christian community, or if you're in the Christian community, that Jesus died for our sins so we don't have to die. The little girl was asking a question based on her faith. And for that, asking questions, doubt, that's awesome. That little girl. But to ask your child then a few days later, as you're going to the cemetery to see your dead wife, that logic to me is just mind-boggling. But so let me finish the story. Maybe this one has a good ending. Maybe.
In her wisdom and said, "Daddy, naturally the shadow. I'd rather the shadow run me over. It wouldn't hurt as much as the truck." He says, "Dear, that's what Jesus has done for us. He died on the cross. The truck of God's judgment went over him. Only the shadow goes over you and me now." Do you get that? The truck of God's judgment ran over him, and only the shadow goes over us now. Now, in regards to disabilities, they are not the final say. They are not the last word. Jesus did not come to make bad people better people. When he came and he died on the cross, he came to make dead people live, okay? Please listen to this poem now by a Christian woman by the name of...
Okay, so Jesus came, and now he's going to go into a poem, and then I guess he's going to have a story at the end. It hurts. This one hurts. Because if it were just, if you believe in God, you'll get better, that's fine. But it's like, oh, God didn't even send his son to heal you? I don't know. Just hearing that logic and hearing the mental gymnastics, and then here he gets out the end-all be-all. For some people it is. For some people, having a disability is their end-all be-all. Just, I don't know what else to say about that. For some people, their end-all be-all.
Annie Johnson Flint. This is the story that I said I was going to share about how we could see how God can use the threads and pull them together in somebody's life that is going through a time of suffering, who is going through some serious disability. Maybe you could see the beautiful thing God's done with this woman's life. So, Annie Johnson Flint, she was born in a home where at a very young age she lost her mother. Shortly after, she lost her father and was brought up and raised in the home of the Flint family. After she graduated college, she contracted arthritis in one of its most crippling forms and was bedridden, not for a couple of years, but for decades of her life. It was not bad enough that she had lost control of her.
To this woman who had arthritis and the crippling form, I'm so sorry, and I understand. Maybe not the pain of arthritis, but I understand the chronic pain you would be going through. I can empathize with that. However, turning that to just God, I don't know if that's going to heal you, but if it helps you feel better, I am for that.
Organs and became incontinent. She spent many of her years on diapers. And if that were not humiliating enough for her, she began to become blind, and cancer began to take its toll. Here's a woman, she's orphaned, she's arthritic, incontinent, she's blind, lying here almost motionless in bed. One eyewitness wrote a book titled The Making of the Beautiful, and said the last time that he saw her, she had 7 pillows cushioning her body to keep her supported from indescribable agony. Alright, she wrote a hymn, and this is how it goes. He giveth more grace as our burdens grow greater. He sendeth more strength as our labors increase. To added afflictions, he addeth his mercy. To multiplied trials, he multiplies peace. When we have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength has failed ere the day is half done.
Okay, I'm personally just done with this video. My video is getting too long. I've gotten quite a good bit ways into this. My thoughts. To say God created some people with disabilities is kind of hurtful. And this is coming from somebody who is still learning to accept her disability. So, it's kind of hurtful. And to say that it's because of sin, and to say that spiritual disability is just as bad as my physical issues, I can't get on board with that. Maybe that's the atheist in me, but I can't get on board with the thought that I'm disabled because somebody decided to eat an apple and now disabilities exist. That's pretty much my takeaway from that. I don't want to be angry at him, and I'm not actually angry at him. I'm angry at the ideology he's now pushing. I'm angry at that thought process. Because the Bible, even then if you read the Bible, it doesn't say very good things about disabled people. And that's just as hurtful. But anyway, this is Erin. These were my thoughts. These were my opinions. I hope you liked this video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe. And have a good day.